Hi, I'm Gavin Montgomery and I manage critical minerals research here at S&P. I've been covering lithium-ion battery materials market for nearly 10 years, and in that time there's been a huge amount of change in terms of expectations versus the reality of chemistries employed. If we go back around 10 years ago, the consensus really was that most electric vehicles would employ some form of ternary cells. That is, cells with a cathode composed of nickel manganese cobalt or nickel cobalt aluminium. And the reason for this was that these cells had the highest energy density and therefore provided the vehicle with longer range, which was really seen as a make or break factor for most people in terms of buying an electric vehicle. However, it didn't really turn out like that. And as with many things in the battery materials space, developments in China sharply altered this course. And what we saw in China was a renaissance of LFP, or lithium iron phosphate, which was a cathode chemistry that had been largely overlooked due to its lower energy density. What happened, however, was that Chinese cell companies made various advancements, such as changing the form factor and removing pack modules to essentially cram more LFP cells into an EV battery pack and produce an overall pack energy density comparable to some of the supposedly better NMC or NCA packs. Most importantly, LFP was cheaper, given it didn't utilize sort of expensive cathode materials like nickel and cobalt, and was also simpler to produce. And these LFP developments were wildly successful, so much so that LFP accounted for over 75% of packs installed in Chinese EVs last year. And really the impact of all this has been enormous on markets. China's switched to mostly LFP combined with sort of more lower than expected uptake of electric vehicle sales in Western markets has really meant that demand for NMC, NCA cathode materials like nickel, cobalt, and lithium hydroxide has just not materialized as mining companies and refineries projected around a decade ago. And so we've seen the nickel and cobalt markets in a state of oversupply for the last few years, to the point where we have seen recently that the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which produces the majority of the world's cobalt, and the government of Indonesia, that produces the majority of the world's nickel, both intervene to curb supply and try to support prices. So what does the future hold? Well, the LFP trend in China is now going global as many Western automakers look to balance cost with performance and are either actively considering its use or already retooling their plants for LFP. And this brings a new set of challenges with new supply chains that include sourcing lithium carbonate and phosphate. And add to that, we are seeing increasing buzz around the likes of sodium-ion technology, manganese-rich chemistries, and solid-state batteries, which will all, in their own ways, influence the type and tonnages of raw materials required. So really, the potential for mismatches between supply and demand of battery materials looks set to be something we will continue to see going forward.